I'm Laura Knights, CEO of Knights Consulting, creator of BlackWomanLeading.com, and the host of Black Woman Leading, the podcast. This podcast amplifies the needs and experiences of Black women leaders in the workplace with a holistic focus on three core areas: leadership development, mental wellness, and relationship management. Our ultimate aim is to help Black women learn, heal, and grow in their leadership capacity. Before we jump into this next podcast episode, I wanted to invite you to the 2025 Black Woman Leading Live Conference and Retreat, taking place May 27th through the 30th, 2025 in Virginia Beach. Now, if you haven't heard, Black Woman Leading Live is the premier leadership development conference to help Black women professionals learn, heal, and grow in their leadership capacity. Imagine a community of Black women leaders from across the country supporting you as you clarify your career growth strategy, work on refining your leadership skills, and make a plan to tend to your mental health and self-care. Yes, we do all of that at this transformational, professional, and personal development experience designed by Black women for Black women. Now, activities will include workshops, panels, wellness breaks, laser coaching, networking, action planning, and some fun community events. And at the 2025 event, in addition to our overall focus on your career development and holistic wellness, we'll dive a little bit deeper into the critical leadership competency of strategic communication. Every effective leader has gained some mastery of strategic communication, and we want to help you to do the same. So yes, we're going to get into all of this. And sis, you need to be there. Get all the details and save your seat at www.bwlretreat.com. Okay. Welcome everyone. Today we are talking about giving as a way of life with Dr. Froswa Booker. We are so happy to have you. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm elated to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Wonderful. So we're going to get into this topic, and I just love your view on this topic and what we're talking about today. But first, let me give our audience the official on you and share your bio. So Froswa Booker-Drew, Ph.D., is a network weaver who believes relationships are the key to our personal, professional, and organizational growth. She has been quoted and featured in several publications due to her extensive background in leadership, nonprofit management, philanthropy, partnership development, training, and education. She is the founder of Solstice Consultancy, LLC, providing DEI, leadership training, community engagement strategies, and philanthropic and partnership guidance for institutions. She also founded the Reconciliation and Restoration Foundation in 2022 with a group of deeply experienced and invested nonprofit leaders with the intent to support the growth of Black-led nonprofits. Formerly the Vice President of Community Affairs for the State Fair of Texas, Froswa was responsible for grant making, educational programming, and community initiatives. And more than 70% of organizations funded were led by people of color, okay? As the previous National Community Engagement Director for World Vision, she served as a catalyst, partnership broker, and builder of the capacity of local partners and multiple locations across the U.S. to improve and sustain the well-being of children and their families. She is also the co-founder of Heritage Giving Circle, one of the first Black women giving circles in the state of Texas, and co-founder of both Power in Action Dallas and the South Dallas Employment Project. She graduated with a Ph.D. from Antioch University in Leadership and Change with a focus on social capital, diverse women, change management, and relational leadership. And she's currently an adjunct professor at Tulane University in the Master of Public Administration program, teaching the Governance, Leadership, and Sustainability course, and is an affiliate faculty member at the Graduate School of Leadership and Change at Antioch University. Do y'all see the receipts, honey? Okay. We love a guest with receipts.
Girl, you
we
reading that?
love
I'm like, oh Lord, let me take a nap. Jeez.
we love a guest with receipts, honey. The experts are in the building. So why did I want to bring Dr. Froswa on? Her PR rep reached out and was sharing with me about all this amazing things she was doing. And what jumped out at me, because it was a new concept, I kind of thought I knew what it was, but I wasn't that well versed in, was the giving circles. And thinking of this season's theme about community care is critical. I'm like, let me see what she's talking about with this. So we had an intro chat and we talked about that and more. It was all good vibes. And I'm like, okay, she's kindred to us at Black Woman Leading. So I had to get her in here so you all can hear her wisdom and her insight and some of the paradigm shifting perspectives that she's having around this topic we're talking about today. So we're going to get into all of that. But I always ask, Dr. Francois, I always ask all of our guests, because you are a Black woman leading too. And so I always like to ask, what does the phrase Black woman leading mean to you? And we've heard a little bit about your professional background, but if you could share your take on kind of your journey that led you to this work, we'd love to hear that as well.
I don't think many of us start out with the idea of I'm going to be a leader. I
Yeah.
think life just happens. Like the kids say, life be life. And I think it just
Yes.
happens where you're placed in these situations quite often out of reluctance. But you're placed in a situation where you go, I got to do something. And so I think for me, it was watching these amazing sisters, my mother, my grandmother, and community who were always giving and who always were
Right.
helping with the fruit baskets as a child, being drug along to the sick and shut in. That
Yes.
was such a part of the journey. And I didn't realize at that time the seeds that they were planting. I also thought leadership meant that you had a title. And I did not recognize that, like what my mother was doing and my grandmother, they were leading too. And I think my
Yeah.
journey started off watching these women and coming to college. And I remember the first week of being in the dorm. I moved from Louisiana to Texas, didn't know anybody. And we were having an election. I said, well, I'm going to run. I'm going to see. I had ran for office in high school. They were, and got up and spoke my heart and won unanimously against like 10, 12 girls. And I was like, okay. And it taught me a lesson then. When you're authentic, people get you. I didn't get in and promise, oh, we're going to have TVs in everybody's room and we're going to do all these things. And you can have men over all the time. That could have got me in. That wasn't going to happen. So I didn't promise things like that. I just came and was my authentic self. And so it's just been a journey of serving that placed me in positions to lead, which for many
Yeah.
people that's counterintuitive, but I don't think people understands leading is actually serving.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's giving to our
Yes.
topic, right? Giving as
Yes.
a way of life. Let's now, one of the things I mentioned that drew me to your work was this concept of giving circles. Just the name of it was like, what is this? Can you share what is a giving circle? And from your take on being very involved in them, how do giving circles facilitate community building?
It's an excellent question. Um, Black people have always done giving circles. We didn't know that's what it was called. So when you
Yeah.
put that money in church together and we're all pooling those funds to be able to support a
The
cause,
building fund.
get that envelope every Sunday, you got 2 or 3 envelopes and you put a little in the building. That really was the formation of giving circles in our community, to be
Yeah.
honest. We have always had this spirit about us, even in being oppressed, we've always wanted to give. And so giving circles are not a new concept. But what happened with us, it's a sister here in Dallas, Akila Wallace, who came to me and Dr. Halima Lee Francis and said, I want to do a giving circle. And I had heard of them, but they were so far out of our reach because many of the women who were involved and some of the ones I was familiar with that were Anglo were paying $5,000, $10,000 to be in it. And for many of us, we ain't got that sitting in the bank account. If we do, it's not to just be able to give out like
Not for
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we did was we came together and we had about 40 plus Black women who pooled their funds. We agreed that we wanted all of our money to go to organizations led by Black women because all of us
Mm,
in some way were in the nonprofit space. And we noticed that a lot of the sisters who were running organizations were not getting supported. And data proves that. The Miss Foundation has done a report last year, year before last, that's called the Change Report. And I may be slaughtering some of the name, but in the report, they talk about 0.5 to 0.6% of all funding in this country goes to organizations led by Black women. So
mm.
we didn't have that data, but we saw what was happening out of
Yeah,
billions and millions. We're only getting 0.5% of that. So we decided to pool our funds to support organizations within certain counties in North Texas that were led by Black women. We were not trying to fund organizations that had huge budgets because we felt like they had support, but we wanted to fund these grassroots organizations. And to date, we've given over what $100,000 of our
I
money,
love it.
no corporate support. I've
I love
stepped
that.
back because I want younger sisters to be involved, and I think that part of leading is knowing when it's time to go. Y'all
Yeah,
got this. I'll be here when you need me. But I've stepped back. But to watch these sisters continue to do this work and still be there giving money. And the way we do it is you pledge. It's either $500 or 1,000, and they're about to make some changes even with what that looks like. So there are more levels of giving,
got
but
it.
we wanted to make sure that Black women didn't feel like they couldn't do it, that you could pledge, 100 and some dollars every month, and then you got to vote on which nonprofits
Yeah,
you wanted to get the funds.
I love that. I love that. See, now I'm like, dang, I need to start a giving
You
circle with
can.
my friends.
You can. It's
I
that
love
simple.
this. I love it.
It's so simple. There's a group called Philanthropy Together that is a sister who actually is chairing Heritage now, but she works for them and she goes around the country, Taisha Wilson, and helps people set up
I
giving
love it.
circles. So this is something that's a national movement because what we do understand, and international, is that if we want to see change in our community, we are going to have to put our resources up to be able to make the change that we want to see. And it's not just the doing, we got to put up the money too.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta put the money where the mouth is, because it
Yes.
takes resources to do
Yes.
this work,
Yes, it
right?
does.
Let's talk on the point of giving money, okay? In our initial discussion, you said Black folks have always been philanthropists, and
Mhm.
I'm like, that might need to be your quote to go on the image because I just loved it. I love when we talk giving your body of work in philanthropy, in nonprofit management and leadership. I love how your view is expansive because a lot of Black folks they would not call us philanthropists. I know friends who are entrepreneurs who their business are growing and they're like, once I get to this amount, part of my vision is to be a philanthropist. So I love this frame you had, like, baby, you've been a
Yeah,
philanthropist. Can you
always.
share? Yeah, share about that, like expanding our vision of philanthropy and what that means and our role within it.
Yeah, because I don't think we understand that when I'm taking my relative's child in and I'm caring for this child, that's philanthropy. For us in
Yeah.
our community, we just saw it as responsibility, but it actually is giving. And so
Yes.
we have, allowed others to co-opt something that we've always been doing. We've always been philanthropists.
Mm.
When I saw my mom put $5 in a card to give to people that were sick, that was philanthropy, but I didn't know it
Yeah.
at the time because my idea of philanthropy was the Kellogg's and the
Big
Lilies,
bucks.
the
Yeah.
yes, and not recognizing that even the little bitty amount is philanthropy. And it's more than the money. It's the tithes, definitely. Because we do that at church, but we tithe our
Yeah.
time, we tithe our talents, all of those. And truth be told, our testimonies are a form of giving
Yes.
too, because we
Yeah.
can really help connect to each other, heal each other through our words. That is a form of giving too. And so I want us to embrace the totality of what giving is. And it's so much more than writing a check. That's important. But we do all of that in our community. We are some of the most selfless people. And when you look at what data shows about Black giving, Black people, despite us, when you see the racial wealth equity gap and you see all those things,
Yeah.
we are so, not equitable compared to other groups of people. And yet we tend to be the most generous and one of the most generous groups of people that exist. That's who we are.
Mm. Wow. Wow. I love that. And just expanding that scope of you are a philanthropist now. Like, yes, your capacity may grow as your resources grow, but right now in this space, there is a way that you can give, a way that you can
Yes, and
contribute. I
own
love
that.
that.
And own that
And
you're a
own it. Yeah.
philanthropist. There is nothing wrong with saying that I am a philanthropist. And I was uneasy at first because I was like, well, I'm
Yeah.
not doing big money. I'm doing, here and here. That is still philanthropy. And we need to
Yeah.
own that and walk in it.
I'm getting me a shirt made, Dr. Francois. I'm getting me a shirt
Get the
made. I
t-shirt.
am a philanthropist. Now, when we think about the causes that we can contribute to right now, right? Lots of different causes. What are your thoughts on how we can be strategic as a community with our giving power? Because you have had some organized initiatives, things you founded where these people organized to do
Yeah.
something. And we know everyone is not going to be in a formal kind of role like that. But do you have any thoughts on that of, how can we be strategic as a community with our giving power?
I think to your point, I think there is the organization piece. What organizations are doing great work that you can be a part of, that you
Hmm.
could even do your funds? I don't think we realize that as Black people, you can do something called donor advised funds. You can actually put your fund with your bank or a community foundation in your community. If there is no community foundation, banks typically have donor advised funds. That's starting your own foundation, and you're putting
Wow.
money, and they just take a percentage off of that. They're called DAFs. They take a percentage off of that for the administrative costs, but you could actually say to a foundation, instead of saying, I want to run one, you could do that too. But if you wanted to
Yeah.
do that, you can tell them, I want my money only to go to these kinds of projects. So that's one way of being strategic, is saying, I'm going to let someone else do all the grant reports and applications, and I'm going to just inform what that looks like. The other thing is, you
Yeah.
can actually go and decide, is there a cause or an organization that you are passionate about? Do your research. You want to look at 990s, you can go on Charity Navigator. The challenge is that many of our smaller nonprofits are not going to have big budgets. And so be okay and knowing that many of these organizations are not going to have a $5 million budget. But what you can do is talk to them and do your research. Learn about their boards. Do they have strong boards and governance? Do they have, fiscal policies that are in place so you can make sure that they're managing well? But don't just get a money, give your time, because I don't think people recognize one of the ways of being a philanthropist is the skill-based volunteering. And that is the thing
Yeah.
I'm on so hard right now is I meet nonprofits who have their own buildings, and they need someone to come in and do facilities projections and tell them about what in 5 years is going to happen with that roof. If you've got those kind of talents, that's another way that you can be strategic, is using your talent to help build the capacity of an organization.
I love that. Now, would that count? Look, I'm going way back to my nonprofit management days. Would something like that count as like in-kind donation?
Yes,
When they
yes.
Okay.
But depending on what the service is, say you're an attorney, that service, they can actually say this is the cost of that. If
This
it
is the
was,
cost of it.
if they had to pay for it, what would be that
Yeah.
cost? And so it's important, especially if you're providing professional services, that you're able to say, this is how much I gave, and it would have cost this organization $50,000, but I gave this pro bono. So there are
Yeah.
opportunities for you to be able to do good. And what I say to young professionals, it's a great way to also help and build your resume, because you're getting some skills behind you. If it's social media, if it's marketing, if it is strategic planning, those kinds of skills, they have to pay for that. And sometimes that
Yeah.
budget is not available. How can you use your skills to help offset those costs?
Yeah, and this is another way that people, when you use those skills and you can put a monetary amount to it. I'm thinking back to my days. I used to be a nonprofit leader in a Black woman led small nonprofit. And one of the things that was really helpful for us when we would get those big grants, I remember we had got a 20, I think they're still around. I was in Illinois at the time, a 21st century community learning center
Center,
grant.
yes.
Yeah, we got that grant. And how that grant worked is a 5-year grant. And let's say first year is $250,000. each year the dollar amount decreases. And
Mhm.
to keep getting that money, you have to show what you have been able to come up with to build sustainability. So you also are supporting those organizations when maybe you didn't give them the $50,000, but you gave them the $50,000 in consulting
Yes.
fees. They can count
As
that
a
in
match.
what as a match
Mhm.
that allows them to keep getting other funds.
Yes.
So there's a lot of residual benefit as well for those small organizations and those community-based organizations as
Yes.
well. I love it. So I know you're really passionate about social capital, about relational leadership, and this is a big part about community. Can you define, because those might be new terms for people, can you define what these terms mean from your vantage point? And the second part I would love you to talk about is any insights on how Black women can amplify their
Mm.
leadership in those areas.
Mm. Social capital is a term. This is my favorite thing. I didn't even know what it was until I was working on my dissertation, but it is a term that was coined by a gentleman named Hannafin. He saw some parents sharing resources at a school, and he said they're sharing social capital. And the term
Hmm.
has gone through a number of iterations, and you see it in different spaces. Sociology, it shows up in economics where people talk about, actors, people that have weak and strong ties. So LinkedIn is a prime example of social capital, but the analysis side of it, which is called social network analysis. And so what LinkedIn does is you got their first, second, third connection. Those are all ties. Your third connection is a weak tie. Your first would be considered a strong tie. That's
Okay.
deceptive because many of us have people that we friended. We don't even know who those folks are. If they walked up to us in the coffee
Exactly.
shop, we wouldn't know them. And so the goal is for social capital. And let me go back. There's a man who's kind of the modern day father of it named Putnam, Robert Putnam. He wrote a book in 2000 called Bowling Alone. It's probably his most groundbreaking book that looks at social capital. And he's written books about Blacks, people in the church, and how that has been a center point for us to build social capital. Social capital is about relationships, it's networks, it's associations. We often focus on financial capital and thinking about money, and that is a form of capital. But I don't think we recognize that our relationships are also a form of capital. Because keep in mind, people want you even during this election. They want you to go out and talk to your friends. That's using your
Yep.
social capital to influence. And there are all these different types of social capital. There's one that's called informational capital, which is I'm sharing resources. So I may email you and I have all this information that you're now able to access, or favor capital, where I'm the person who has the hookup and you come to me
Yes.
because it's oh she always had tickets. So you get that favor from me, and maybe later on I may come back and go, hey, I need this from you. Another type, and there are all these different forms, but we don't realize as a people, and especially as Black women, how to harness the power of those
Yes.
relationships. I think intuitively we know that we need to do it, but I don't think we're often strategic about building those relationships. And it's not just going passing out cards and networking with people. That's a piece of it. But if you don't follow up and you don't go have a coffees and continue the conversation, then all you did was pass out a card. And it's
Yeah.
okay to know that everybody you meet is not going to be your first level relationship. We have to be okay in knowing that you only had a capacity to manage so many relationships at one time. So be
Yep.
okay in knowing that yes, you want to grow your network, but you want to be strategic about what does that look like? Who's missing from my network? And being intentional about mapping it out. There's an activity called Coin, and it's this circle of influence, and it's a map that helps you really map out your relationships. So who are the folks that know your work? Who are the people that may be familiar with you but may not know your work? That gives you a clue of how do I now begin to start leveraging deeper these relationships. But until you call it out and begin to really
Yeah.
map it, you're just kind of floating around and not taking advantage of the possibilities in these people.
Yeah, I love it. In Black Woman Leading, both in our early career and our mid-career program, they do a network mapping exercise. And the
Good.
goal is for them to, they do their leadership development plan and have their goals. But then the goal is, okay, we got these goals over here, but then we need to create the relationship management strategy that would support those
Yes.
goals. And oftentimes we think just that organic, people know I'm doing this, but it has to be intentional. Like
They
you got to
don't.
have a nurture strategy. First of all, they got too much going on. Like people do not know. And so it is sometimes I find for us getting over, even though we pour, getting over the I don't want to be a bother kind of thing, or
Oh
I don't want to
yeah.
bug those people. And like, child, they bugging you. So
And I say a closed mouth don't get fed. And
hello.
so if you're not going to do it, I tell young people that because I mentor a lot of young people, and I'm often saying to them, I'm telling you, you're not bugging me. So if you don't take advantage of talking to me and making the time, that's on you because you're
Yeah,
missing out on the opportunity. There is a way that you can do it where you're not a pest to people. And so
yeah.
it's helping folks understand if you calling me every 20 minutes, well, yeah, I'm probably gonna change my number or
It's a
block you.
problem.
That's
Yeah.
stalking. That's a difference. It's helping us become, yeah, you don't want to be in the window and looking up and it's like,
That's a
hey,
difference
hey,
now.
what you doing? Not that. Let me make that clear, y'all. Don't say Froswa I told you. Start going
No
up to people.
stalking.
Don't stalk. Don't do that. But you can send notes, Pierre. And I typically encourage people every quarter someone you haven't heard from, send a note and go, hey, I just want to catch up. How are things going?
Yeah,
But be strategic. You can't do that with everybody, but think
yes,
about what are the skills that you're missing or you'd like to enhance. Find individuals who have that, and those are the ones that you begin to start building relationships with. Because I tell women this all the time you need mentors, you need coaches, you need sponsors. If you don't have, you
yeah.
need a personal board of directors. If you don't have those people in your mix, you're missing out on your growth opportunity.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, yeah, you speaking our language. This is what we do over here.
I
I
love
love
it.
it. And I mean, when we think about community, right? Community has is levels to this, right? So you got your core support, your family,
Yes.
your sister friends, you got all of that. But then included in your community is this professional network too. And you're thinking about strategically what could be the resource, how they can support your goals, but you also are thinking strategically about what do you have to offer? What are your
Yes.
gifts? How can you be supportive?
Yes.
And that give and take is where you really start to find the magic happening.
It's absolutely that. It is
Yeah,
not going in always expecting. But I
yeah,
also think as Black women, we don't think about what we have to offer. I think
yeah,
so often we have been conditioned to have this lack mentality, which shows up even in philanthropy, because we don't think we're
yes,
philanthropists. We don't think we have anything to give. And I think it's important for women to really, especially Black women, to reframe the way we see ourselves. You are a portal not only for children to come through, but you are a portal for all of this spiritually, mentally, emotionally.
ideas, yes,
All of that
everything.
is designed to come through you. So, how do you begin to see? And it's not being arrogant, it's recognizing the vessel that you are. And so, me being a person of faith, I just see that God downloads into each of us if we allow it.
Yes,
And if we are in community, not only with God, but with people, that's got to spill out. So you got to know that you have
yeah.
something to offer and that you're here for purpose.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And the other side of this that's kind of resonating with me now as you're talking is that when we talk about the unraveling of the lack mindset, right? Is that there is that one side of like, do I have something to offer that we got to work with that you talking about? But then the other side of that too is the really asking for what we need
Yeah,
because the lack and part of this is systemic.
it
So if you
is.
listening and it's resonating, this is not just you need to get it together. This is
It
systemic,
is.
that we have been taught to be resourceful with very little resource
Yes.
because we didn't have it, and so that was a superpower. But I'll give you an example. I'll never forget, this was in one of our recent cohorts, and one of our participants had a light bulb moment in the session. She works for a wealthy institution, very wealthy institution, and she's what we would call a strategic leader. So she's leading an initiative that touches functionally across the organization, but she doesn't
Mm,
have direct reports. She's more, has to influence people across the organization. So she was given this huge initiative that she had to build from scratch, develop the strategy, enact, get stakeholders involved. It was this huge initiative, and I think she had one other colleague that was supporting on that. It had major value impact to the organization if this was executed properly, right?
Mhm.
And she said she had a light bulb moment after talking with some of her Black woman leading colleagues. She was in a meeting, and another one of her colleagues, who was a white woman, who had another project, but a very small niche project that only touched a small amount, was maybe a tenth of the scale of hers. And she said, I looked at this meeting, and I saw this woman asking for the staffing that she needed, the resources that she needed, the extra time it was going to take her to be set up for success. And she said, I had not even thought
Wow.
I had to ask for it. She said, I thought this is the budget I get. Oh, it's not enough, but let me rub these pennies together and make it work. So she said, I'm bending over backwards. And she said, it was nothing that I was deprived of. I just hadn't even thought to ask for it. So she said, after she saw this woman putting her request out, she said, well, hell, let me ask.
Yes.
So she said, I need another staff person. I'm going to need another 2 weeks. Here's how I need to increase the budget. And they said, okay, and gave her the money.
And they
And so I
will.
think I think part of that lack mindset is not only from us to the contribution from us, it's also sometimes not even thinking about the request of asking for
Yes,
more
that
to
because
do this.
but it's a
Yeah.
value statement. It ultimately
Yes.
is how we value ourselves.
Yes.
I'll never forget, and I was having this conversation recently. I was in the car with a friend of mine, and it looks like we're about to get hit. And so I start turning toward my side, and she goes, "Isn't that interesting? You would rather take the hit." She said, "Think about that." And I went, and
Wow.
I'm protecting you. But she's like, "Why would you do that? You're just as valuable as I am. So why would you put yourself in harm's way?" And it's a reminder
Wow.
that as Black women, we are turning all the time, taking hits that we should not take,
Ooh, ooh, I
doing
got a chill on that, Doc.
all the time. And it just made me sit back and go, wow. And then we get defensive like I did. I was like, well, I'm trying to help you. And she's sitting there
I'm
going,
trying to help
yeah. And
you.
she's like, I didn't ask you to do that. And how often are we
Wow.
placing ourselves in positions
That's good.
where we're thinking people, one need us. I say this in my jobs. When people do not realize your value in a place, you need to go goodbye. It does
Yeah.
not make sense to try to make people see your value, but so much of that is how we feel about ourselves. And so if we don't value ourselves, people are going to respond accordingly. They're not going to give you the budget because as Black women, we've been conditioned to be superwoman, had an S on the chest.
Yeah.
I can
Make
do
it
this,
work.
I can do this, I can do that. I got all of this. And so we are conditioned to make it work. At some point, it's saying
Mm.
it's not the either or. I can make it work or not. It's I can make it work, and these are the resources that I need from you to be able to do this, or we're not doing it. And that's a very different
Ooh.
mindset for
Ooh.
us.
Ooh.
And most of us are not used to that.
Okay, you about to make me pass this collection plate now because you just in
The
here
doors of the
dropping
church are
gems in here,
the doors
okay?
of the church are open. But it is
But I
it's
mean, as you
true.
talk, two things are coming up for me as you were just sharing that last piece. Self-preservation
Hmm.
and when is it okay to center self,
Yes.
right? That, and then the other thing that's coming up for me is boundaries. Because at the end of the day, a lot of this is a boundaries exercise, right? You said, didn't nobody ask you to help me? I didn't ask you to protect me,
That was one
but
of the
that was my
hardest
job
ones.
in my head.
That was one of the hardest
Yeah.
lessons for me as a Black woman leading, is that I'm thinking by me giving you advice and being available and stuff that I'm helping you. And I had to have a wake up call of recognizing people are going, "No, I didn't ask for that," and I'm offended and
Wow.
angry because look at what I did for you, and the people are going, "But I didn't ask you to do that." And as Black women, it is this nature to want to give, but it's recognizing that there is a responsibility that we have with giving. There is
Yeah.
accountability that we have to have to ourselves with giving,
Mm.
because you can give and run out if you're not being
Yeah.
replenished. And so
Yeah.
it's a balance of being able to know when is enough, and that even in intimate relationships, it's very easy to want to just care for your children or your mate and just pour pour pour. and not recognizing quite often they're not asking you for that.
Yeah.
Two, because we're doing what we would want them to do for us. So it's beginning to recognize, how do I ask for my needs? And how do I know when enough is enough? And being
Mm,
okay. A period is, and that's the thing I've had to say to people, we do not know how to use grammar in our lives. We get it in sentences. We need to understand a period, that some situations should be a period behind them, complete sentence. No.
yeah.
And some
Yeah.
situations need a comma. We should be okay as Black women with pausing. Doesn't mean that it's a no, but it's okay to take a break. If a sentence has enough sense to do that, then we too
Wow.
should be able to go, I need a comma here, I need a semicolon, new idea, got to pause and move forward. And that's okay.
Mm. It make me think of, look, I sound like I'm old now, the young folks, when they say period with the T on
Yeah,
the end of
periods.
it, okay?
You got to do your face with it
Okay, with a T on the end, okay?
too.
So so we've talked about this episode is given as a way of life. We talked about giving from expanding our views of philanthropy. We've talked about giving of our time, of giving of our resource. But we've also talked about being a giver or having giver as a way of life. Also knowing when the giving needs to stop.
Yes.
Also knowing when the boundary needs to be set. And now I could be giving and causing harm to me
Yes.
at a certain point, right? And so it's a balanced thing, but I think the high line that I'm hearing through all of your feedback and all of the wisdom you're sharing here is that we have always been givers in all of these aspects, and
Yes.
really sitting in that and really
Yes.
embracing that and seeing that as a strength, as a power that we can choose. We have
Yes.
agency over how
Yes.
we are utilizing that, or how we holding it back with the pause and the period. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to transition in a minute to some of our core questions for the season, but what on this topic of giving as a way of life, I mean, we could talk about this all day. Is
Yes.
there anything else that you want to kind of raise up or amplify on this topic from your vantage point?
I just hope Black women walk away recognizing their power, that we have always been givers. And whether you create a giving circle or join one, you are doing it every single day with your time, your tithe, your talent, your testimony. Embrace
Yeah.
those things and then think about, how do you leverage that even more? So, does that mean leveraging it in community and with other people? Is it giving more? What does that look like for you? But I would encourage us, with this being, you know, August is Black Philanthropy Month. We have all these different opportunities with 828 Give Back. Throughout the year, there are all these opportunities for us to give. How can we begin to start creating a movement around Black women and giving to organizations that are doing amazing work but just may not have resources? So
Yeah.
look in your community and begin to start thinking about, how can you give those T's I mentioned to an organization that needs you.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right, let's transition a little bit, because part of the value of our Black Woman Leading podcast is not only to hear your expertise on the topic that we're discussing, but also to tap into a little bit about you as a Black woman leading and how you're navigating as a woman and as a leader, as a Black woman. So if we think about our season's theme of community care is critical. In Black Woman Leading, we talk a lot about being mirrors for each other, right? And how a lot of our participants are the only in their level of leadership, and there's a unique sense of isolation that they're experiencing, many of them, when they reach out, when they're Googling and they find us, because they want to, they have some questions. There's something going on at work and they're wondering, am I tripping, or is
Yeah.
something really going on here? But they don't have those mirrors that really understand to bounce off of. And so we feel like being a mirror for each other is, and having mirrors is critical to bring our full selves to whatever spaces we occupy. So when you think about your journey, or even this current season of life, who are your mirrors and how have they supported you in your career growth and even in your personal growth and development?
You know, my mirrors are, my mother has been a mirror for me. You know, she's not too far from being 80. And
Wow.
watching her journey, she has helped me to see how to age gracefully. That's
Mm.
been a gift because I think for many of us as we get older, there's a fear of getting old. And I think being able to see myself and her and what the trajectory can be and the possibility. She's been such a mirror for me of where I'm going and where I'm heading. My
Wow.
daughter is another mirror because of her being younger. And
Wow.
I see in her things that I go, "Oh, wow, if I had that at 23, 24, how can I help her to be able to do it a little differently or to use my
Yeah.
experience and elevate?" But she also shows me the possibility, in looking at her. She reminds me of hope. And so even when
Yeah.
I get distraught, I get to look at her and go, "Oh my God, that's a younger me." And wow, but that's still me now. And she's her own person, has her own identity, but
Yeah.
she reminds me of the youthfulness that's still there. And so I have these two opposing mirrors that they reflect off each other. But they have really been, a guide for me as I get older, and I'm in this middle season of life. Having both of them kind of show me what possibility is.
I love that. As you're talking, the thing that's coming in my head is, a lot of times we talk about, part of my background, I'm a mental health professional. And a lot of times we talk about generational trauma and all that kind of stuff. But as you're talking about looking forward to your mom and then even this hope,
Mhm.
inspiration you're getting from your daughter, that I think sometimes we forget that yes, there is generational
Oh,
trauma that
yes.
goes down the line. But guess what? There is also generational and ancestral healing that goes
Yes.
back and forward down the
Yes.
line. And so seeing your daughter do things or have an attitude about things can heal something in you from that
Yes.
season
Yes.
of your life.
Yes.
And I love that you have that mirror on both sides. That's a
Yes.
gift. That's
It's a
really a blessing.
blessing. It's a
Yeah,
blessing. And
that's
it
really a
and it has its
blessing.
challenges. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't want to say it's perfect. Me and my daughter earlier, I was like, "I'm a killer."
She was working your nerves, Doc.
The white, do you see? I'm like, that's her right here. She's gonna kill me. But you have those challenges, and I think it's being able to recognize that mirrors don't always show you the best side of you,
Hello.
and that's okay.
Yeah,
And if
they
you
show
don't
you
like
some
what
things
you
you might need to
see,
change.
yes, and
True,
if you
yeah.
don't like what you see, change it. And so I'm looking,
Yeah.
going, okay, yeah, there's some stuff I got to work on.
Okay. I love
Mhm.
it. I love it. What part of community care also, right, is being able to refill your own cup so that you can pour to
Yes.
others. So what does self-care look like for you these days? How are you taking care of yourself these
I
days?
told my doctor recently, I'm not. And part of it is I'm in a season of change right now. I'm in a lot of
Okay.
transition. And so when you're in the midst of a lot of transition, it's hard. So, for me, it typically is being in community, as strange as it sounds. I get my healing from
Yeah.
being around other women. There is something about the power of our testimonies and just the
Yeah.
laughter and being in space. And so I'm looking forward to this weekend having a good friend of mine come over and help me with moving and everything. But typically, my routine is not just the getting the nails and the massages. That's a piece of it. But I am learning that my healing can't be in isolation. My healing
Yes.
part of it is this individualized time alone, but there also is this power in being with other people. And so that's how I take
Yeah.
care of myself.
I love it. We want to normalize asking for help in our community. And we look at all our guests as role models. So can you share a time when you asked for help and it made the difference for you?
Lord, this move. I mean,
Ah,
just moving. I told you earlier, it is something to move after 50 and having to
yeah,
uproot all this stuff and having to ask friends to go come over. I need you. I reached out to my pastor and I was like, I need movers. These people are
yeah.
asking for a whole lot. Can you send somebody to help me? And these wonderful men are here helping me move. So it's
Wow,
been
wow.
recent of me going, I can't do this. And I've also had to say, and my daughter told me this, she said, you have to be careful because you're still performing and yet there's a lot going on. And you got to
Yeah,
say to people, I'm going through this so that they don't have this expectation that you're going to keep performing at the level that you're doing because you're not going to be able
yes,
to. And I was like, that is so wow because I think it's the mantra of Black women is all this stuff is going on and you still getting things done.
You still
And
getting things
and you're
done.
not telling people the truth about, y'all, all of this is happening right now to me. I need some grace. I need some
Yeah,
space. And that's what
yeah,
I've had to ask for in this season, is not just the
yeah.
physical help, but it's, y'all, this is a transition for me. I need some grace.
I need some grace. And it's back to the boundaries exercise,
Yes.
right? Back to the
Yes.
boundaries exercise. Okay, last question. We talked about what you're receiving. What's your care or one of your care superpowers? What do you offer to your community that gives them a safe space to land?
Um, I am the person that people come to for wisdom. It's
Mm.
funny to be in this season. I used to look at the old sisters in the whited church with the white stockings, and I always thought, and the big old white hats, and I always thought, oh God, that's wisdom. And I'm beginning to see that it doesn't have to look like that where I have to have on my
Yeah,
matron outfit. But I find that the support I bring to community is just people come to get wisdom. And it's something I pray for. The Bible says if you ask for wisdom, God will give it to you liberally. And so I
yeah.
constantly ask for that in all of my dealings because I recognize how much I need it. So that's probably the thing that people will tap me for.
I love it. Now you're gonna have people in your DMs like Dr. Froswa. I just wanted to get your opinion on this. I need your wisdom. Y'all don't you say she says she needs some space now. Y'all don't be
Well,
bombarding her.
at one point it moves from being cool to you asking for consulting now. So we got to be
Hello.
mindful of
I'ma
that
send you an invoice.
too.
Imma send you an invoice. I love it. This has been fantastic. It's been
Thank
so good
you.
talking to you. Thank you for
It
sharing your
is.
wisdom with us. Where can people connect with you beyond the podcast? And also if you have any special things going on that you want people to know about, we love to hear that as well.
Well, be on the lookout. I've got a book that's going to be coming out next year called Front Porch Wisdom.
Woo!
And I'm talking
Love
about
it.
women of color and leadership. And so, but from a faith lens. And so it's just my challenges that I've had and how I use scripture to help me, get through. It's not preaching, but it will teach you. And so that's
Yeah.
coming. And then just check me out. My website is drfroswabooker.com. And so it's easy to find me. Send me a DM. I don't read those because I'm a little older, but you can send me an email and I'll check you out on
Send
the
her an
email.
email,
Send me an
okay?
email.
Email her. We'll have all of her links in the show notes as well. If you all enjoyed this discussion today, share it with a friend, okay? We're on all major podcast platforms, and you can also listen to our podcast from our website, blackwomanleading.com. Make sure you favorite, review, comment, all the things to help us to amplify these very important conversations that we're having that impact us and that center us. So you can follow Black Woman Leading on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I mentioned our website is blackwomanleading.com. You can connect with me personally on all streaming platforms, on all social media platforms. I'm Laura E. Knights. And then finally, if you want to know about our corporate services where we provide leadership development training and advisory, you can check out our corporate site at knightsconsultinggroup.com. We would love to connect with you in any of these ways. And until next time, be well.